Welcome to Home Education Matters, the weekly podcast supporting you on your home education journey. Hello and welcome to another episode of Home Education Matters, and today I am joined again by Ash, and we will be talking about her journey into home education. And I feel like we should be renaming it actually, because you're very much in home education now.
Yeah,
and
thick of it.
yeah, you're in the thick of it, exactly. So Ash, tell us how your month of May has been going for you and Ismael.
So, I think it's not been as positive as my previous months, I'd say. I don't know what's happened. I can't quite place my finger on it, but motivation has been really, really difficult this month. And I feel all of those feelings of insecurity when right in the beginning when I'm like, am I doing enough? Is this the right thing? All of that has definitely played a part now. I mean, I've really been thinking about it a lot. I know Ismael he's been invited to some transition days at the new school that he wants to go to in September. So I'm wondering if that has something to do with it, or if, he would have been in year 6, so all of the children around him will be doing SATs this year, and then there's definitely a wind down period after SATs. I'm wondering if there's some sort of kind of biological clock in all 11-year-olds where they all want to wind down around now. I can't quite place my finger on it, but I've had a really tricky month with him with regards to actually just refusing to do work sometimes and refusing to actually want to participate in things, which I've not had for it's been challenging to motivate him at times, but this month has been particularly difficult, I would say.
What does that work refusal look like? Is it particular things like workbooks, or is it particular subjects, or is it across the board?
So it's workbooks. So he has a tutor for maths, and I think it's kind of like wanting to put that off as much as possible. But I'm really glad that I had that in place, because that's something that he knows there's nothing he can do to kind of get out of that. He will try and say, I'm not feeling that great today, or all the usual excuses that I've become very used to, but he knows that that's set in time and there's no budging on that. But other things, kind of the other workbook stuff, I suppose English, SPAG, those kinds of things that we're working on, I've been trying to get him to a stage where when he does go into secondary school next year, he's not feeling completely like he's not had any sit down learning, or the structure of the questions that he's going to be answering aren't similar to what he's used to from before. So I've been working on that, but there really hasn't been. I mean, I was thinking, have I gone too hard on him? I really haven't. I know I haven't. In fact, my work's been really busy as well. So in some ways, I've kind of let him kind of take responsibility and let him guide his learning more so than I probably was doing before. So I know it's not that. Or maybe no, because the structure is still the same as well. So I really have been trying to work out what the reason is for his refusal, or his it's not complete refusal. Like, he will do it. He just takes a lot more coaxing than I was having to do before, which is difficult. And I think it really just stressed me out about going forward with September as well, and things like I'm just getting flashbacks of homework and having to basically force him to do homework, or like really sit there with him and really pulling teeth sometimes. That kind of, I was getting those school vibes, as opposed to before, where it was a bit more independent and a bit more, he was getting enjoyment out of learning. Yes, maybe it's just been a bad month. He does seem to have picked up in the last couple of days, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's something that's other people are familiar with. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to put my annoying therapist hat on now.
Okay, no, please do.
And I wonder whether the stress that you feel as a response to him not putting the work in, because of the looming deadline of him going back to school, somehow is kind of unconsciously affecting the dynamic. Because I know that if I can't sleep at night, if I have to do something the next morning, it makes my sleep worse, because I'm stressing about the fact that I'm not sleeping and I need to be able to sleep because I've got something on the next morning. Whereas if I've got nothing on the next day, or I've got a very calm, chilled day, it's like I don't get so stressed about my sleep, which means I sleep better. And I wonder whether partly the two of you maybe have this kind of underlying stress or awareness of this looming deadline of work, which means that these natural flows that you get in motivation feel a bit more heightened, which then increases your tension, which maybe then increases his resistance.
That I think you've hit the nail on the head in certain areas. Absolutely. I think I know I'm getting more tense because I can feel myself getting more tense, and I can feel myself saying things like, you don't have that long to catch up with certain things. Like, not on purpose, of course. I correct myself when I hear it. My internal monologue is saying those things. That of course I'll be exuding those things without even wanting to. So I absolutely, I do agree with that. I think part of it also is that, so he, a few nights ago, he was up really late, stressing about the transition days and not knowing where to go, and the anxiety that comes with those things. So, and it was like a good 3 hour session of asking the same question again, and me trying to kind of make it, like, work out a plan with him and those sorts of things. But so obviously that is something that's happening in his mind right now, something that he's trying to kind of get to terms with. And I suppose it doesn't help if I'm kind of adding to the pressure inadvertently, or trying to motivate him to, I guess, get to build some stamina with the workbooks and things like that, which I know he doesn't particularly enjoy. But at the same time, if he's making the decision to go to school, then he needs to kind of also, there's got to be a balance, right? There's got to be a bit of him being self-motivated, and there can be leeway in some things but not in all things. So yeah, I think it's one of those months where I think we're just kind of trying to find a new equilibrium, trying to find a new way forward with the looming deadline that is coming up in front of us, that I'm not looking forward to, as you can probably tell.
It's really difficult because it must be very hard to be able to relax into home education, knowing that you kind of have to do it a certain way, or feel a pressure to keep some structure going, or build up his resilience to sitting down for long periods or whatever, because of this sense of having to go back to school. It must sort of take a certain amount of the fluidity out of it.
It does, and I think the whole vibe, for want of a better word, before was a lot more relaxed, because we weren't thinking about September, we weren't kind of focusing on that. So I felt like that was probably a more natural learning journey for us anyway, because he was discovering things himself. So he was following his passions and doing the things that he wanted to do. He is still doing that, to be fair. He is still doing the things that he's interested in. However, yeah, with this looming thing, it has put a bit of an additional pressure on, which is that no good comes of mainstream schools, and no good comes of being forced to be in a certain place at a certain time and behave in a certain way. But yeah, I think that's where we are right now. I think we are hopefully turning a corner, because the last few days he has been more interested in doing the things that we're doing. I think I've had to kind of back off a little bit, which I completely accept as something that I need to work on. It's just, you always want what's best for your child, don't you? You always want them to be the most prepared they can be, and the most able to handle any challenges that life throws at them. But sometimes I think one thing that I need to do is just, which I had to do in the beginning as well, is just back off a little bit. I think in the beginning I was very kind of, we need to do this at this time, and then I learned from that. And now I feel as though that part of the personality has had to come back. Maybe I need to take more of a back seat. So you're right.
I think as well, I mean, my children haven't been to school, as you know, but from a lot of the podcasts that I've done and speaking to other home educating parents who've taken their child out of school because school hasn't been good for them, a lot of the resilience they build up to school, if they go to college or anything like that afterwards, isn't so much like the resilience when it comes to being at a certain level academically, or sitting down for longer periods, or being able to sit and work with workbooks. It's almost a resilience that comes from the home education experience, this sense of being center stage, and this sense of being having your autonomy nurtured. And I know from my previous co-host, she put her daughter back into school after a year or two out, and actually I think she's come back out again now. But she felt that her daughter strengthened her resolve and strengthened her ability to cope with the school experience from the home education, rather than from the practicing of school skills at home. So I wonder whether that can give you a certain amount of relief, just to sort of think, well, maybe just by being together and home educating and allowing him to explore his interests and to have that fluid response to work, maybe that in itself, it will help to build up his ability to cope with school.
Time will tell, I guess. I think like thinking back, reflecting a little bit, I think that, it absolutely was the right decision. He wasn't in a place, like, mentally, he's in such a better place to be able to cope with challenges that life might throw at him. And he's done a lot of growing up in the last, not that he was ever immature, because he wasn't, but like he's done a lot of growing up in the last few months where his confidence has built in a lot of things. So I think they are definite wins, and I think he needed that. I think he needed that at this moment in time. And he has got the, clearly he has got the autonomy to be able to decide that he does want to go into school and back into the school system. And yeah, like, as I've said before, he just needs to know that if it's not working out, then he can always. There was always a plan B, which should be the plan A. But yeah, there's always a plan B.
And how have you found socializing this week, this month? How have you found socializing this month?
So I really do feel like we've gone on top of that. I feel as though we've extended, after listening to what we talked about in the podcast last month, about extending those times when we're together, when we do those meetups. So we stay later. So we while I'm tidying up, and then when we go out into the park and have a bit of a chat with the parents and things like that. So he has time, like a good hour or so just to play outside. And the weather's been amazing as well. Not today, but it has been amazing. So they've had a chance to come just play in the park, on the playground, and just kind of socialize in a less structured way, which has been great. And that was one of my biggest, interestingly, that was one of my biggest concerns. And I think it probably is one of the biggest concerns of most parents who are thinking of home educating, is where will they get the aspect, where will they get the socialization? And I really haven't had nothing to worry about, because he's actually really good in a group setting. He's funny, he's laughing, he's joining in. So I think I was overly stressed about that for no reason, really, because he's done really well with it. And even other areas as well, there are other children that he's been meeting up with, as in not part of the home ed community, but certainly family, friends, and things like that. And he is able to hold himself. And what I love about him is that he's now got the confidence to be able to, if we go to a restaurant and he wants to be the one to order, or he wants to go and ask an adult somewhere, or where can I find this? And these are all skills that I would have. Kids probably his age might struggle with a little bit, because they might feel shy, or unable to have the confidence to do that, whereas he is able to just go straight and ask what he needs, and be able to find his way through things, and be able to he's really resourceful in that way, by being able to speak and able to articulate what he wants and needs, which is great. And I hope that continues within the school setting, because I know for him that was a trigger point for him to kind of go into his shell. So I'm really hoping that he continues to just flourish and be himself. So we will see. Time will tell.
It sounds like it's really increased his confidence in himself, in himself as himself, but also in himself as part of a wider social community, which, as you say, he can take into school and feel better about himself when he's in that kind of social setting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's exactly what you hit the nail on the head again. Absolutely, he's able to take that with him in social settings. I've had some negativity, I guess, from external people, so wider families, the family who I'm close to, have been very involved in Ismael's life, and very, very close to him as well. And it's really difficult to change the attitudes of people towards home education, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I think my siblings are very, professional. My sister's a surgeon, all those sorts of things, and she definitely disagrees with my choice to home educate Ismael. And she's very much of the thought that if you teach a child that you can just take, if they don't like a situation and you take them out of that situation, then they're not learning resilience, and they're not able to then how are they going to survive in the real world when something happens at work, and what, they're just going to leave their job? That's not, and it's really difficult. My sister doesn't have any children either, so it's very difficult to actually convince her, or to even I guess express like the benefits that Ismael has received from being able. It's a really privileged position to be able to be home educated as well, I think, because not all parents are able to do it, or have the confidence to be able to do it. And the amazing things that he has achieved is really difficult to change people's minds, but I think that definitely has been something that has impacted me in a way, like my confidence and things like that, of being able to do this. And I think this is probably something that other people can relate to as well. And it is just a case of, I guess, we have to agree to disagree, and that's it. But it is a challenge, I think, especially in large families, like big families who like to have an opinion on everything.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think you're right also that a lot of people listening will resonate with that. I think it can be really helpful to have kind of stock arguments that you put up against the sort of the main arguments that you hear. And actually, I bought my daughter a book that's something like How Vegans Argue with Meat Eaters or something, because she really wanted to have like good answers in response to meat eaters who sort of like question her veganism. And when I was looking at it, I thought I really ought to write this for home educators.
Yes.
Because I think it's really helpful to have like stock answers. Because when you were saying that about what your sister was saying, immediately my head was like coming out with all these responses. Because obviously, if somebody when you were saying, like what happens if you're in the work environment, you're just going to leave your job if you hate it, and I was nodding because I was like, well, yes. Isn't this what we would normally do? Like, do we all just stay in jobs that we hate and loathe and like are made utterly miserable by them? And I think actually maybe that's a generational thing, because I know that raising a couple of Gen Zers, they have super strong boundaries. My word, that generation knows exactly what it will and won't put up with. And I think actually that a lot of this idea of resilience and putting up with things that we don't really enjoy is very much a kind of Gen X boomer kind of thing, whereas I think millennials and Gen Z are really much less inclined to do that. So I sometimes feel like home education is at the vanguard of this new generation of people that actually are saying, why should I have to be resilient to your crap? Like, I actually don't want to be resilient to it. I want to push back against it. But yeah, it's so difficult, I think, when you either hear arguments back against home education and it kind of knocks your confidence, or you just sense that they're not really on board, or maybe they're waiting for you to fail, and so that then they will blame it all on home education.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, yeah. I think it's another thing that we have, because I know that home education is on the rise in the UK. I know that lots of people are now considering it as a realistic option. However, because it's still not the ordinary, it's not the normal thing to do, it's not the norm. I think it's still one of the things that we have to battle with constantly, and it's exhausting. It really is. I think it is exhausting. I think especially if you care about what people think, which you probably shouldn't. It's not that I care about what the people think. It's more that they have always had an invested, like they've invested in him from an emotional standpoint with Ismael and helped him with things, and they have had a big part of his, I guess, growth as he is. But obviously, ultimately, the decision of home educating him or going into school lies with me. But I don't like having to justify at this point. It's been so many months now. Like, what month are we on? Kind of like 8 or something like that. And he's doing really well. Yes, we've had a bit of a tricky month, but overall he's doing really, really well. And in himself, he's like much happier, much healthier, and much more resilient. And you can say that's because the stress has been taken away from him. But why would you want to be in a toxic environment where, as you said, like, it's just not working and it's not a great place? Because he's not returning to the same school. He's returning to a secondary school that he wants to have a fresh start in. And if we'd just gone through this year the way he was, I do feel by the end of the year, he was already like spent. He was just like completely emotionally drained at the end of year 5. And I can't even imagine how much worse it would have gotten this year. So yeah, it's just one of those things. You have to do what's right for your children, but it is really annoying, I think it's probably the right word, to have to constantly have to justify yourself or feel like what you're doing, like, have second guess, because already you've got a lot of pressure on you being responsible for your child's education. Then those doubts don't help when other people are kind of reinforcing them. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that realistically, the biggest argument that you can ever put against these views is just having a successful home education life and being able to point to it and saying it's working. Everyone's happy, everyone's succeeding, and it's all great. And I think that this last month, it sounds to me like a lot of the stresses that have been occurring this month have been actually caused by going back into school in September. And so I don't want to constantly sort of take home education, paint it in like a super rosy light. And I hope that people listening to this podcast know that I try to be as fair as possible when it comes to the pluses and minuses of home education. But it sounds to me like for you and for Ismael, that home education journey since September has been really very positive, and that you've both been very relaxed and happy, and Ismael in particular has really thrived. And some of the issues that are now arising sound like they're from the imminent school return rather than the extension of the home education journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, when you can do things at your own pace, and I'm just thinking back to kind of a couple of months ago where everything just felt very like we could choose the direction we wanted to go in. It just felt really nice. It felt like there was no pressure on me. There was no pressure on Ismael. Although there's elements, but not a great deal of pressure on either of us. And that's when we really thrived. And I'm hoping to get back to there again, but I'm still very realistic in that now it just feels a bit like a countdown. We're at the end of May already. It's almost June, so we've got a couple of months, and we'll probably have a break for the summer as well. And just then it will be countdown to beginning school. So yeah, I think it's a shame because I know what we're losing here. So it's tricky. It's difficult.
Well, I mean, nobody wants Ismael not to enjoy school when he goes back next
Yeah.
September. We all want him to love it. However, worst case scenario is he doesn't like it and he comes back out and you carry on home educating, and that feels like not a bad scenario. So you have two good scenarios, right? One, the first scenario is he goes back to school, loves it, and everything goes really well, in which case he stays there and you don't have to listen to your relatives telling you how bad your choices are, which is always a bonus. And the second scenario is that he goes back and actually doesn't like it and he recognizes there's a route out, and you go back to home educating and you thrive and survive, and sort of proceed through home education in a really positive way. So both of those are nice scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this year's giving me the confidence for sure to kind of to make sure that I know I can do it again. I know that I know there are tools out there. I know that there's just a plethora of resources available out there that you can use quite cheaply. And it's given me the confidence to be able to do that again. So absolutely, yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention the fact that you're knocking socializing out of the park. You're like doing so well with that. I mean, I think you're right. I think most people really worry about that, and that's the thing that. And I know that when we talked a little bit in some of our early episodes that you were concerned about, and now to hear you say, there's nothing at all to worry about, and I've got no worries at all with that, is really lovely to hear it. And I'm sure people listening who are maybe on the fence about doing it or have just started doing it will get a lot of relief from that as well.
Yeah, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I think that things have to happen right now. I think some of it is just watching how things play out and see what happens with it, and that's what's happened in a really positive way with us. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we will catch up with you at the end of June, and we will see how your June month has gone, and then I'm guessing you'll be breaking up for summer holidays.
We will be, yeah, mid July-ish. Yeah, I think so.
How very nice. So I will see you at the end of next month, Ash, and it's been absolutely lovely catching up with you again today.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's Home Education Matters podcast. See you at the next one. Have a lovely day.